think about it as a barrier that's going on top of whatever else you've put on. And ideally, that's just cleansing, moisturizing sunscreen. And if your sunscreen can act as a moisturizer, even better. If you're not doing too many significant outdoor activities, not doing too many strenuous activities where you're sweating, generally one application in the morning is good. And I would recommend doing that 365, rain or shine, fall, winter, summer, spring, because UVA is constant throughout the year. It's constant throughout the day, and it can come through windows. And a lot of these anti-cancer treatments can make you more sensitive to UVA. If you do go outside and do physical activities, the idea is to reapply frequently and liberally. So ideally reapplying at least once every 2 hours or after significant sweat or coming out of a pool. Now, in terms of what to use is the question, which I'm sure a lot of people want to know. So the short answer is whatever you're going to use on a regular basis, because what I like, you may not like, and what you like, I may not like. But the general principles should be this. Number one, the SPF, sun protection factor, which unfortunately only measures UVB, not UVA, should be at least 30 or higher. And then it should also say broad spectrum, or ideally have the UVA with a circle on it, which states that it covers the UVA spectrum. In terms of how sunscreens work, there are two main categories. There's physical sunscreens that are traditionally zinc or titanium. And these initially were thought to act, and for all intents purposes in this discussion, act essentially as a physical barrier. So if you remember the zinc oxide in the 80s, people with like pink or neon yellow noses, that is a physical barrier. That's literally just putting on diaper cream on your nose. And that's what it is, right? Zinc oxide. And it's just putting it on your nose and making sure that the sun doesn't come through it. That has been micronized and made such that it's cosmetically elegant so that it actually can rub in. And a lot of these physical brands do have some type of tint in them that can also act as a foundation or a cover-up, and can help with skin tone as well. So the physical ones are one type, and then there's the chemical ones, also known cruelly as organic filters. It's a chemistry term, so it's not an organic product, but it's an organic chemistry reaction, because essentially what these filters do is UV radiation hits the skin, it interacts with the organic filter, creating an organic chemistry reaction that then dissipates the UV radiation rather than absorbing it into your skin, into your cells, into your DNA. And that typically falls more into the UVB spectrum. And what happens to get UVA coverage with physical sunscreens, with organic sunscreens, is there's a combination of different filters that are used, because different organic filters cover different spectrums of the UV. So what I like to recommend, because again, I've stressed the importance of UVA, as well as people tend to react less to physical filters, is a really good physical filter sunscreen.
And would that be on the packaging? If I was looking at products, it might say mineral sunscreen?
Correct. Exactly. If it says mineral, then it's generally going to be a zinc or titanium. Now, it may also have an organic filter in it, which generally the ones that do say mineral to begin with, their organic filters generally tend not to be the ones that people will react to. Whereas if you remember,
it might be mineral and a chemical combined.
It may be, yeah. And some of the issues with, there's nothing wrong with organic filters, and there's some excellent organic filters that I use personally on a regular basis, especially for large body surface areas. The zinc and titanium ones tend not to rub in as well as the organic ones. And so for full body, that's generally the one that I'm using. So there are some excellent ones. But I personally react to one particular physical filter that tend to be in some of the lower end sunscreens.
Great. So then what you're saying is see what the reaction is. You want to look for both the mineral is a wonderful one for the face. It might not react as much. And when you were talking about the order, you said moisturizer and then sunscreen. If we are doing that, if our sunscreen isn't a moisturizer as well, should we wait a period of time between moisturizing and sunscreen, or can I just put it on right away?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So ideally, you should be putting on a sunscreen about 20 minutes before UV exposure in order to get maximum absorption. And then ideally, yes, if you are combining products, you should wait probably at least 2 to 5 minutes for the moisturizer to rub in. Otherwise, you get a dilutional effect. So you could make an SPF 30 act more like an SPF 15 just because it's spreading out in combination with the moisturizer.
And what about if I'm choosing to wear foundation or a makeup product that I put on my skin? Where should that go in the order?
So I'm no expert in putting those on.
Foundation?
Yeah. But ideally, if you could put on the foundation first and then sunscreen, I understand that may not be realistic, just from a rubbing it in perspective. If you are wearing foundations, mineral-based foundations, a lot of them can actually provide some additional SPF protection. So I would have no problem putting on a sunscreen, waiting a period of time, and then applying your makeup on top of that.
Perfect.
Now, I also want to say that me personally, I just use a sunscreen as a daily facial moisturizer. Oftentimes some of the better ones that are mineral based are very elegant cosmetically and provide enough moisturization for kind of average skin.
Great. And the one last question we had on sunscreen is for someone who's going through radiation treatment. And if they've had a reaction on their skin from radiation, should they be putting sunscreen on that, covering it with something else, or what would you recommend?
Sorry, you broke up there just a little bit.
Sorry.
So I understand.
Yeah, is it safe to put sunscreen on skin that's been a site for radiation treatment?
Yeah, so I mean, thankfully, a lot of our radiation sites are sites that are generally protected by clothing. And that skin is extremely sensitive. Think of basically that skin as a really bad flare of eczema. And so if you can, I would just rely on more physical barrier protections. I'd put on a moisturizer. As long as the skin's not the target, you can use a topical steroid, as we've talked about together in the past, which I'm sure we'll get into later tonight. Then covering with UV protective clothing. You could use sunscreen, but I would just be cautious because there do tend to be more ingredients in that people could just react to. You want something that's really quite anti-inflammatory for radiation dermatitis.